right. Good evening, Gerard. It's great to see you here. For those people that are online with us, this right here, right? I guess it's on this side. This right here. This is Pastor Gerard Bolling from St. Louis, Missouri, pastor at Bethlehem Lutheran Church. And it's a joy to have you with us, man. How has your day been?
It's been a crazy day. It's been jam-packed with a lot of different stuff. We just double recorded for worship on Sunday. So our voices are tired and everything else. But it's been a good day. Yeah. Nice weather in St. Louis, not too hot.
Hey, you know what? It's not too hot here either.
Yeah.
But I think like it's really never too hot here.
I kind of feel that way too. It's however too cold there.
Actually what I've experienced last winter. That's a lot of it, actually.
Yeah.
Right now it is, let's see, 62 degrees. So that's not bad.
That's freezing.
Oh, I love it. Hey, for those people that are on here with us, here's what I want to let you know, is that when we kind of get the conversation going on, you are more than welcome to post a comment if that's a question that you have for Gerard, if that's a question you have for me. If it's just like a hoorah, Gerard, I love it. Keep on preaching, keep on going. You can post that here, and we can kind of have this be a little bit of a conversation. The great thing about this is that, like Gerard said, he's in St. Louis. I'm in Merrill. And there's people from kind of all over the country and maybe all over the globe watching this, which is just kind of the cool thing. So here we go. Allison Quinn, she says hi. Don Teskey is watching here with us, and Sally Camps wants Pastor G to know that she's here. So Pastor G, just so that you know, Sally is here with us.
Glad that
So through this coronavirus, COVID-19, we've called it safer at home here. That's kind of the legislation out of Wisconsin. How's it been going for y'all?
St. Louis is kind of a different sort of city when it comes to things. We rely a little bit more on public transportation. So I think that piece of it has added a different kind of flavor to the virus, in that people are still needing to do that. They're still needing to take public transport. And so the slow of it has not come as fast as we've hoped because of that. But things are going really well here relatively. We're starting to see some stuff open back up, like you guys likely are into phase 2 here. So we're excited. Even churches are starting to open back up too, for worship on Sundays. So good.
Hey, that's great. So we have a couple more people here. Faith Lutheran Church, Green Bay. What's up, Faith? They're having a watch party via Zoom. Also with that church, Pam Heiser is here. Kyla used to work with her. We got people from Wausau here with us. We got people from Illinois here with us.
Nice.
We got people from kind of all over the place here. So like I said, if you're just jumping on here with us, we want to let you know that you're more than welcome. If you have a comment, a question, feel free to put it down in the comments as we kind of get rolling here. And what I've been telling people here, at least from the Merrill area, is that I'm not going to claim to have all the answers. I may have some. I may have some suggestions. You may have some. You may have some suggestions. But what we're really looking to do is just really have an open and candid conversation about the social injustice that's happening, and kind of twofold. One, as pastors, right? What the church, the institutional church, what we can do, but also as the church, as the people, as the people watching, as followers of Jesus, what we can do, what we can think, and what we can pray. So all those things are kind of what we're going to be looking at here. So as we kind of jump into it here really quick, we got Austin, Texas. What up, Austin, Texas, and Kobe? Lee Belmas in Wausau. So we got a lot of people getting on here. So you know what? Let's just go ahead and get into it here. So I guess the whole way that this conversation came up is that I reached out to Gerard. Gerard and I we went to college together, and I went to be a director of Christian education. You went through pre-sim, so you went straight to the seminary. I was out being a DCE for a little bit, and then I came to the seminary, and I think it was your 4th year and my 1st year.
That's kind of how it worked out.
Yeah. So we were at the seminary together for a little bit, and through mutual friends, Facebook, small Lutheran world, our path just kind of kept on crossing. And when all this stuff happened, I reached out to Gerard just as a fellow pastor. I said, hey, this is something that we need to wrestle with. Would you be willing to jump on Facebook here with us? And he didn't hesitate. He said, yes, absolutely. I would love to. Yeah. And here he is. So Gerard, just to kind of give you a little context of Merrill, and then I want to jump into some questions here. Merrill itself is up in the north woods. So what I've learned is anything kind of north of Wausau-ish is the north woods. So we are up here. Merrill is a town of like 10,000, and we are according to the last census that was taken, we are 97% white, 0.9% black, 1.2% Hispanic. All of that to say, up here in Merrill, not quite as diverse and ethnic as you are in St. Louis. Okay. And that kind of is going to, I think, kind of come into play a little on in our conversation here. But, in some ways, our Merrill is not all that different from some other, places in the country as well. So the first question that I have for you, Gerard, and you can jump on in here, kind of the rallying cry, right? The hearkening cry of all the social injustice has been Black Lives Matter. And we've seen that, plastered throughout social media, right? So it was last Tuesday that because of that, that we blacked out Facebook and social media. And it's been, all the way since, Trayvon Martin, and Mike Brown, Freddie Gray, George Floyd, right? And then we can name lots and lots of others, has kind of come this movement. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good, not just phrase, but a good rallying cry. Yeah. How are we as followers of Jesus? How are we supposed to go kind of about thinking about that? Because it kind of comes in 2 parts, right? You have the rallying cry, mm-hmm. and then you have the Black Lives Matters organization. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts there?
So yeah, I mean, first and foremost, before I even go there, I want to say that I want to make a really clear statement that I, as a Black American, am not going to speak for every Black American that you've ever met, okay?
Absolutely.
I am going to go ahead and give you a little piece of our narrative that we have as a community, which oftentimes gets forgotten, or some people put to the side, and a little bit of perspective on what I like to call a spectrum of where people are at. And I'm always kind of refer back to that spectrum. There are Black folks on the spectrum who are all the way on the side of, let's not do anything about this. And you've seen their stuff posted on social media. And then there's Black folks all the way on the other end who are looting, who are, downtown doing different things at every protest, peaceful and not peaceful, and doing their thing. And so we're going to speak to that spectrum and everyone in between as we talk about this community. Black Lives Matter. Let's get right into it. Black Lives Matter. I think what's important about that statement is to, just like you said, Pastor Rodriguez, you got to separate those two, the organization and the rallying cry. I compare it to Kleenex. I have told a lot of learns this week. If I say, pass me a Kleenex, usually you'll pass me a tissue to wipe my face with, right? Because I've got something in my nose or whatever else, or I'm crying or something like that. However, a Kleenex is actually a certain brand, a particular brand of what is called a facial tissue. The facial tissue can be any brand. It could be Scott facial tissue. It could be any brand in the world. But we've attributed Kleenex because it's a capitalization on that to all facial tissue ever, when that's something we equivocated and not other people. So when you're thinking of Black Lives Matter and you think of 3 women from the Southeast that started an organization geared toward LGBTQIA, which is the whole term for that community, and then other issues of social injustice, that's one thing, and a lot of people are watching news programs and they're saying, well, everything Black Lives Matter is attributed to this one organization, so I don't even want to speak the phrase Black Lives Matter, when really Black Lives Matter is, like you said, the movement and the beginning of a rallying cry for something more. And Black Lives Matter did not begin in our lifetimes. I'm in my 30s now. It didn't begin, when I was born. It didn't begin with any specific shooting, even of our lifetimes. It began years and years ago when our people were brought over in slave ships, and they used to have this syndrome that they'd talk about amongst Black Americans that we call middle passage syndrome, where hurt and anger and pain is carried inside of a person as they come into a different space and they're robbed of culture, an ability to do what they want to do, true freedom, as those different things. The mattering of a life, right? The idea of that comes from that time, and it's encapsulated in so many different things, and it's only magnified by our world with social media and what we can see now in front of us. I remember being very young in New York City is where I grew up. Amadou Diallo, when he was shot on the street multiple times, I remember there being a rallying cry of, man, the lives of African Americans have to matter. I remember back with Trayvon Martin, killed with a bag of Skittles, holding food, walking down the street. I remember there being a bigger rallying cry of that. And then it builds up even more and more with the other deaths that we've seen on the media. The media has only enhanced something that's always been there. I was talking to one of my brothers earlier today on a Zoom, a pastor in Chicagoland area, an African American pastor at African American Lutheran Church. And he was saying, we were doing this in the 70s, when he started, we were gathering together. And what he said almost brought me to tears. He said, but it was only Blacks at that time. It was just us and a few whites, and a few other people. And now it's everybody. And he just expressed the desire to have that keep going and to have that build and grow over time, so that people can say simply that Black lives matter. They're important to other people. They're important to our God, and it should be important in today's society.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. So the question that I have is, when we talk about this, there's usually a pushback, right? That it's, I kind of get this feeling that some people are thinking, how dare you say that Black Lives Matter? How dare you say that really just Black Lives Matter, when it's not just Black Lives Matter, it's all lives that matter. And I know that we had a conversation about this, but can you kind of voice a little bit of kind of what your thoughts are versus Black lives versus all lives?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Let me tell it to you like this. Every year, our synod and many other Christian churches all around our nation, even our world, we march on Washington, right? For the Life March. And I think it's beautiful. I want to go one day. I've expressed interest in that. I want to make sure to make that a priority to go. And it is like thousands of people descended into that city that are marching toward the White House. And they're screaming out, the lives of aborted children, those lives matter. right? And 122,000 children are aborted each and every day in the United States of America. That comes up to about 50 million. It's pretty alarming. It's emotional to even think about that volume, that number of people who have been taken advantage of in that way and lost life in that way. And we march with confidence and with solidarity together. And we say the lives of these children matter. Now, I want you to imagine if I was there, like I fully plan on being there one day, and I had a sign and a megaphone that was louder than everybody's megaphone and was bigger than everybody's sign. And my sign says, "The life of my daughter, Monroe, who is 1.5 years old," right? Her life matters. And I was screaming that. And I had that. And I said, all babies' lives should really matter, including the life of my daughter, Monroe. What about her? Everybody would probably look at me and somebody would probably throw something at me, right? Because they get that my daughter is a loved and redeemed child of God. They know her life matters. They know the lives of all babies matter, but we're descending on Washington specifically to speak about the lives of children who are being murdered each and every day. If I apply it to this, we're not saying that the lives of all people don't matter. We're just saying right now, African Americans are being murdered each and every day. And we're concerned about those lives. Not that we don't care about anybody else's life, but we are concerned about the sanctity of those lives and the preservation of those lives over time. It's the same exact argument as that.
Yeah, right. So that's right on point. It's not that we're not concerned about all lives. It's just that the Black lives are the ones that are in danger at this point in time. So as followers of Jesus, we are called to love our neighbor. We're called to embrace those people around us, those people that look like us, those people that don't look like us. And I really think that is, like you said, exactly what it's getting down to. So let me throw up a couple of comments here, Gerard. Jenny Batcher-Beyer just wants to thank you for your insight here. Andrew Plath, how does Black Lives Matter tie in with the message that Martin Luther King Jr. preached? What do you think?
That's a good one. So the infamous "I Had a Dream" speech, little known fact, did you know that when Martin Luther King Jr. preached that wasn't the first time he preached it? Somebody shouted to him in the background as he's preaching, "Martin, tell him about the dream," right? It was something that he had preached a lot of different times to a lot of different groups of people, a message that was unified in that all people, even though we are different, we are created equal, right? But it's something that started as sort of a grassroots movement that tied into something bigger. And it's become also another rallying cry in and of itself, like the "I Had a Dream" in general, which is beautiful. If we tie in Black Lives Matter with that, in that time, in the civil rights movement, because you got to work your time, right? The idea was to get to a point where we were equal. And what came out was separate but equal more than anything else. You've got the same things, but we're going to be separated as people groups, okay? And as we progress in time, we have to come to a place of mixed together, and all together, walking together, almost like the word synod, right? We're walking together in solidarity and in love, and we're equals. And we have to be able to express our feelings to one another as people who look different, but then also express our narratives to one another as people who have simply experienced life differently just because of the color of their skin. So this is not something old, just like the "I Had a Dream" speech is not something that just came up that 1 second. This is something that we need to continue to work on.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of, you brought up Martin Luther King Jr. He has so many great quotes out there, and a lot of that have been, recirculating through social media now because of the day and age that we're in. But one that comes to mind is this one right here: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And if you've been in social media, I'm assuming that you've probably seen that quote kind of circle around your different feeds.
Yeah.
Speak to that a little bit, Gerard. What do you think about that?
Yeah, when we speak about justice, and I preached on this on Sunday, I preached Micah 6:8, and the idea of mishpat, which is the Hebrew word for justice. Mishpat has two flavors to it. The first flavor is a flavor of justice that is done in righting a wrong, right? Righting a wrong, and that's kind of a secondary feel to that word. So if we're trying to right a wrong, we see that something bad has happened to somebody or a people group, and we want to make that right again in a restoration type of way. We can do that really well. The first part we struggle with, which is primary justice. If we just did what God told us to do, if we just followed the scriptures, we wouldn't have these problems. And we all know that, right? If we just followed the scriptures to the T, we wouldn't have these problems. What's the problem with that? Well, we're sinful, creatures, and we fall constantly, and we fall short constantly. But if we're using God's justice to measure what we view as justice, it would be a little different. Now, how does that happen? Does it happen overnight? No, it happens over time. I was just talking to a pastor friend yesterday about he had mentioned to me, we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and we've been talking about Black Lives Matter for many years, and, it's kind of getting old. It's the same old thing, and, why are we talking about this again? Let's not beat a dead horse sort of thing. Well, what I go back to is every 3 years, we preach the same stuff in our pericope. And so Grandma, if she's been at her church for a long time, she's heard a lot of the same sermon content, right? And so why doesn't she just know it and go back to her house and never go to church again? Why doesn't she just do that? Because she has to be reminded of who she is, right? She has to be constantly having that right or that wrong righted, as she's killed to the law, and killed to the old Adam and made alive with the new self and the new creation that God has made us. So, yeah, it's a constant.
Yeah, and that is, so for those people that call Trinity home, we are digging in to Amos this weekend. So we're in the middle of a sermon series that we're calling Minor Prophets, Major Messages. Yeah. And Amos ties in so well what the connection between justice and righteousness is. And it's so close. You really can't, you can't separate the two. So that idea of justice having two flavors, two things. One, if you haven't gone to listen to Pastor Bolling's message yet, I encourage you to do it. It's awesome. It's on their Facebook page, Bethlehem Lutheran Church down in St. Louis. I listened to it. Gerard, it was great. And if you hear me this week say that justice has a couple of flavors, you just kind of know where I got it from. So Gerard, let's take a couple of comments here. Let's get into Zach Warman here has a question. Zach says, you and I both have mixed families with both Black and white people we love and care about. Do you have any advice on how to have those difficult conversations about race with family members who are hesitant to embrace Black Lives Matters? And that kind of gets with this one too, is really, how do you respond to people who just say, I don't get it? Or maybe even those people that go so far to say that it's not a thing. Mm-hmm. What would you say to those? And thank you, Paula and Zach, for those questions.
Good questions. So what I would say to that in response, yes, I have a mixed family. My son is right behind me. He is biracial, half Black, half white. My wife is white and her family's white. And so, this is a difficult thing. And here's what I would say. I would say, approach this with caution and give it time, okay? Rome was not built overnight, as they say. It is a marathon, not a sprint, as they say. And it's okay for people to simply say, hey, I really don't understand this. I'm gonna need this explained to me. I'm gonna need to kind of live this and talk about this with a lot of different people. I think that when it comes to families like that, or if you have friends that say, well, why does this matter, or whatever else, here's what I would point them to. I would point them to the fact that when we're speaking about issues like this, it's important to have three prongs. And I can't remember if I made these up or if they're from some author that I can't remember who they are, right? So you have to have a piece, an education piece. You have to be well read with books and podcasts and YouTube channels that speak about issues of race and how it's historical and white supremacy and white privilege and all these things that are terms that are hard to unpack. You have to be educated about these things. That's number one. Number two would be empathy, the second prong. You have to have empathy toward the people group. Something that I've been really discouraged about, especially with the community of faith, is that sometimes we throw up comments on social media or we do this or that, and we fail to realize that the people behind those comments are me. You know, they're Black people, and I'm a person, and my experiences are valid, right? And things that have happened to me are valid, and I have stories, you know, of things that have happened to me, and other people, you know, of color have stories about things that have happened to them, and you need to hear those stories, and you need to show some empathy to it. And hear them and don't cut them off and say, oh, I'm so sorry. Really feel those stories. You know what I bring it back to, Adam? Do you know that at Concordia, Chicago, it was the first time I'd ever seen an elephant? That was the first time when I moved to Chicago that I had ever seen an elephant. And I bring that up to say, I had seen an elephant before, right? I'd seen it in a picture book when I was a kid, and I knew E was for elephant. I had seen a video of an elephant walking around on National Geographic or something. I'd seen other little things about elephants, but the first time I saw an elephant face to face, and I put my arm kind of as close to the trunk as I could and measured how big that was, and I put my leg as close to, you know, the leg of that elephant as I could, and I go, wow, this thing is massive, right? The first time was when I was in college. There's nothing like experiencing something from a primary source rather than a secondary source or following. And that's why you have to have that empathy piece, because you're just seeing pictures of racism. You're just seeing little tidbits of it, but you're not hearing about it in an empathetic way. The third thing that I'll bring up, is the mentorship piece and the walking with somebody. Lutherans, we're real big into that, like walking life together, living life together. Find the POC, that's a buzz term for person of color, in your town, and walk with them through some of their experiences in life. You as a church, if there's an urban church by you, my church would love this, and we do this at our church. Go ahead and connect to that suburban church or that church that's primarily white. Connect to the Black church, connect to the POC church, and live and serve with those people and walk with them and understand what they're really going through, and the kind of things that come up in their lives. If you got those three prongs, I guarantee you won't say, why does this matter to me? Or why do I care about this? Or I don't get it. You'll get it. You'll understand it if you do those three things.
Yeah, that's great. And I would love at the end of this, if I remember it. So Gerard, you're kind of in charge of helping me remember it, because my wife's not here. But I would love to ask you about some resources, some books, some articles, some songs, some podcasts that you have that you would suggest for those people. All right, I wanna talk church, and specifically LCMS for a little bit, and then I want to kind of jump into to kind of talking and dialoguing this with your kids. Just because I think that can be difficult for people to kind of figure out. So I am rather certain I have this stat right, but I think as the LCMS, so the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, so those people who call Trinity here home, we're part of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and we are, I think, the third least diverse church body in kind of all America. And which means that we're just a lot of white German people, stereotypically. So what a couple people are kind of wondering is this. I'm going to throw up two comments to kind of get what I'm trying to get at here. The first one is this: what are the best ways we as Lutherans can get involved in supporting Black Lives Matters? And then from Chris here, what actions do you recommend LCMS congregations take to support predominantly minority Lutheran churches and their parishioners? So I guess the overarching question in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, as followers of Jesus, as the church, what can we do?
Yeah, so one thing that I think is very important as a message to our wider church body and every institution in it, whether you're a Lutheran school in a town or bigger kind of institutions inside of our structure, I would say this: go ahead and diversify your staff as much as you can. And I don't just mean that in a sense of grabbing people of color. Let's grab people of color. Let's take them and hire them. We don't care if they've got any kind of degree or anything. We just need people of color here. In some respects, that might be appropriate. In other respects, diversify what you do and how you do it. So if you are a predominantly white Lutheran school, do you teach Black history in Black History Month? This is a really simple thing, right? Do you teach Black history in Black History Month? Some schools would say, well, why would we do that if we don't have any Black people? Why, I don't know if we're going to teach Black history. Well, Black history is history, right? So we need to be teaching that to our kids no matter what. Exposure to that changes the way that our kids grow, and it changes their missional and their heart DNA as they grow up and they learn about people of color who have done things. Wow, that's what Rosa Parks did, and wow, that's who Crispus Attucks is. It begins to make Black people have a face of heroism a little bit more, rather than what they would normally see on the 9 o'clock news, when their parents snooze off on the couch. So that's one thing. Diversifying our staffs too. I've talked about this a lot, where we can, right? And if we want to diversify our staffs, which I think we should do it in the right way. There's so many people that come to mind, influential LCMS people that I think of that have spoken a lot about this over time. John Nunes, Ian Taylor, Victor Belton, down the line. But I think the message is all the same. We don't need more people in the world in general, not just speaking to the LCMS, because everybody's working on D&I. It's called diversity and inclusion, right? We don't need more people snatching up people of color and putting them on our proverbial rings as a diamond. My grandmother always told me, when you buy a woman a ring, the band should be worth more than the diamond up top, right? The diamond is sparkly, so oftentimes we're distracted by that. The sparkle is what we want. But the band is what holds everything together. The band is the fiber of that piece of jewelry, and it's what makes it beautiful. And oftentimes in the LCMS, our band and the things that hold us together are white carat, and white as in predominantly white as well. Our institutions are made up of mostly white people who work there. And then we choose people of color to come in and put as a diamond on top. To say, oh, we got a Black person that's doing something, or oh, we've got an African American involved in this. We're just gonna go ahead and put them in here. But what happens oftentimes is that African American is in the room, they work there, but they're not at the table. If you don't involve African Americans in making decisions and understanding the fiber and the mission of different organizations, real change doesn't come about. It has to be, real change is unleashed over time, right? And so in order to unleash it, you have to know what you're unleashing, that would be POC, African Americans in the room making decisions that are able to do that. Also, I encourage everybody who's listening to think of yourself, yes, you're Lutheran, but you're also a Christian. You're also a person, and you have a world where you are, and a sphere where you are. The people you work with, the people you play with, you play basketball or recreate with or go to the gym, and all those different spaces, all those spaces that you would normally share Christ with people, anyway, which I hope you're doing that. I'm with your pastor right now, so I'm that you're doing it. That you're sharing the word with those people in those places, and you're asking the Holy Spirit to fill you up and to drive you like a car. When I go into those spaces, I ask the Holy Spirit to slip his hand into me, let me be the glove, slip your hand into me and move me, right? Do the same thing as you speak about racism and as you speak about prejudice in America as well. Holy Spirit, take over and let love speak and let me be quiet. Do that because that changes your space.
Yeah. So basically, if I can kind of summarize what you said, as essentially, you kind of went back to your kind of 2 points, um, education. So getting to teach Black history, and priority or proximity. Have people making decisions, POCs, right? Persons of color, have those people make those decisions, or help in making those decisions. Um, so that is great. So kind of to switch a little bit, to the kids, to the children. And I know that you're going through this with both your little ones as well. That you're having people kind of march past your house, and they're kind of like, I don't usually see people walking in the streets, Daddy. What's going on?
Yeah.
So Beth Weinkoff wants to know, how do you recommend talking to kids about this? And then Kathy Yar, says, talking with kids, this will shape their future views and their perceptions, which is eventually how we kind of, like you said, changes long term, right? So
Yeah.
how we can kind of help with that. So talking specifically for those people who have little ones at home that want to tackle this topic, don't know the best way to bring it up and to have it in a way that they can understand. What do you think?
I think it's two-prong. I'm all about prongs. The first prong would be, my wife and I have talked about this a lot, because we're an interracial couple, and we knew we'd have to talk about race eventually. They'd find us out. They'd notice that I was Black, right? And so we've talked a lot about this, and we did some research on when kids are able to actually understand differences between people. They can, as early as 1.5, know who's safe to go to via color and who's not. That's really early. So again, the first prong is you do it over time. I'm all about doing things over time.
Yep.
If you haven't begun the marathon of speaking about diversity with your family yet, do it now, and begin that marathon of doing it by sitting your kids down and telling them the truth in a way that they can understand it. What I told to my son, who's mixed race, and I don't know if he'll look more Black or look more white,
Right.
but what I told him is, there are people that are upset right now, that are very sad about the way that they've been treated because they look different. There are people who are very, very sad about the way that other people have talked to them and the way that other people have made them feel, just because they don't look like other people look. And we're trying to understand how to do better with that and how to learn more from Jesus about that, And I told my son that the other night on his way to bed. And then, I didn't know if he understood me. He's 3, right?
Right.
And he made me get in bed with him. He made me sleep with him. I'm this big guy in this little kid's bed. And he goes, Daddy, you know where Jesus could help them learn better about how to treat people nice? And I said, where? And he goes, church.
Yes.
So I challenge you. My second prong.
Yep.
Is that your church? Only you can answer that. I know that many different churches are out there, not just Trinity, that are watching. Is that your church? Is that what your pastor, your leaders are pouring into you, of how Jesus wants us to treat everybody, no matter what color? Is that what we're talking about in the fellowship hall after the church workers finish doing their thing up on the stage or on the altar? Are we talking about that in the fellowship hall? Are we seasoning our conversations with salt, as the scripture says, as we talk about those things? Are you talking about it at home when you gather as a Bible study or a small group? Because that's what kids are looking for. They're looking to learn the things of God from the people of God and the place that God promised to be for his people at the church.
Absolutely. And that's, part of our sermon series, Minor Prophets, Major Messages, here is to really tackle some of those topics in the Old Testament. The Old Testament speaks a lot to kind of social injustice happening during the Old Testament day and age. So really speaking specifically to those, and I can say too, as with two little ones as well. I think that they understand a lot more than what we give them credit for. Because my wife and I have been talking to our little ones about the pandemic, right? And they at first were just really confused and a little mad that we weren't able to go to the library. They're like, "Dad, we go to the library at least once a week. Like, what's going on?" And the other day, my oldest one was praying, and he was like, "Please help us go back to Walmart." Like, first of all, bud, out of all the places, that's the one that you're gonna start with. Mm-hmm. But I think that that they understand a lot more than maybe what we think.
Yeah, a whole lot more.
Yeah, which is scary and good all at the same time. So Kobe Nichols kind of he has a big long comment here. I'll throw it up. But he wants to know kind of what you've been feeling the last 3 to 4 weeks. For him, he's in kind of the same family unit as you, right? Mm-hmm. He's married to a white wife, and he, just like you, married up. So you guys are in the same boat. So kind of what has been your thought process? Take us through the last couple weeks, if you will.
Yeah. So that's a personal note. It's been hard. It's been hard for me. And this is going to be a long answer to something that's a short answer, but what's been hard for me is I put up on social media, and I don't regret it. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk about this. Let's just talk through it. And that's what that's what it is. I won't speak for every Black person. I'll speak for me and give you a spectrum, just like I said. And but anybody who wants to talk can talk. What's been hard for me is seeing and hearing from some people who have really bigoted thoughts, about the way life is supposed to be. Who have said this is a political issue that I need to stay out of, that this has nothing to do with anything but the next election, and how this is all a sham, and how this is trying to turn our world upside down just because it would be more advantageous for this or that politician. And I really think those people fail to understand some of the experiences that not only the African Americans they see on TV have had, but that I have had. I remember when my son Lincoln was very little, here in St. Louis. He was born in 2016, so not too long after the Mike Brown incident. And I live in South City, but right at the edge of South County, a South County neighborhood called Shrewsbury. And I remember driving home with my son. He was screaming bloody murder after he was just born. It was just me at home. My wife was out of town. I'm driving home with him. And he's crying. And I'm like, I got to get him home. I got to get him some milk. I underestimated the time as a dad, right? And so I'm driving home, and a cop pulls up behind me. First off, just the terror of when a cop pulls up behind you and you're African American, you know exactly what I mean. If you are African American, you're watching, you're just scared, out of nowhere. But I've got a son now, and that there's a tension with that when you have a child, when you have somebody leaning on you. And so I get pulled over by the officer. My son is crying. It's raining really hard. I roll down my window. I say, "Hey, officer, he said you were going about 2 over." Okay, 2 miles over the speed limit. All right. And then he says, I'm gonna need to detain you, and I was really terrified at that. And he said, actually, I'm gonna head back to my car for a second, hold on. But I want you to roll down your window. I said, well, my window is rolled down. It's raining really hard. And he said, I want you to roll down all your windows all the time. The whole time my son is screaming in the back seat. And I rolled down my windows in the back, knowing that my son was going to get wet when I did that, right? Because it's pouring. And so I roll all these windows down, and the officer goes back to his car, and and he's laughing and he's doing other stuff. I see him in my rearview mirror, but I just sit in my seat and my son is crying, and he was in his car for 20, 30 minutes, could have been an hour. I don't know. I didn't keep track of the time. It was a long time. And it's raining on my son. And he comes back and he gives me a ticket for going 2 over. And then I drive home. I roll up all my windows. I was just 2 blocks from my house. And I take my son upstairs, and I remember him being soaking wet, freezing cold. And I remember holding him in my arms, holding him close to my chest and just bawling, because I couldn't help but to think, if I was a white female going 2 miles over the speed limit, 1.5 actually written on the ticket, over the speed limit, would he have stopped me? Would he have cared that I had a child in the back? And then on top of that, if I was a white female or a white male, would I have had the courage to be able to just say, I don't want my child to get wet back there, and roll up the windows? 2 things scared me. Number one, that it happened at all, and that the officer felt like it was okay to do that. Number 2, that I was so terrified I would have done whatever he wanted me to do, right? That's what Black people go through in Black America every single day. Nobody should live that scared that they're willing to jeopardize the life of somebody who is so young and so little, like my son, and willing to not say anything because they're so terrified, like I did. And I just remember crying over my son that day, and promising to him and saying to him that I'd never do that again, that I'd always have courage to speak up, right? And I think that's what this moment is. I think that a lot of African Americans, we've cried over our children for a long time. And it's time for us to do different. And it's time for our children to grow up in a world where no matter what, they don't have to be afraid of the police. They don't have to be afraid to go out and dress however they want to dress, and say and speak whatever way they'd like to, where their life matters, where all of our lives matter, not only to Jesus, but to other people. So that's how I've been feeling. It's a long story, but long story short, I'm ready, discouraged, but ready.
Yeah, and as I was kind of watching the comments during this whole thing, there was a lot of sad reactions that kind of came through in that. And guys, I'm hearing it for the first time, just like you are, and I'm here to say that's why we're having this conversation. That's why, for those people who call Trinity home, that's why we're having this conversation, because as the church, as for those people who call Trinity home, as your pastor, and as two pastors in the LCMS, things need to change. And that is, I think, just my guess, Gerard, would just be one story you have, out of many others. So one, I want to just say thank you for your honesty. Thank you for being willing to share that. That's, we didn't talk about that beforehand. So being able to be on here in front of 126 people, and whoever watches on demand after that, we just want to say thank you for that. So with that, when we talk about this stuff, I know there's a lot of people that say that and recognize that they have biases and prejudices within them. Some they recognize, some they don't. And what we say in church every week is that's called confession, right? Is confessing those prejudices and biases that we have, and bringing the Lord and finding the forgiveness that is found in Christ through Him. Peter here wants to know, a person identify their own implicit biases and address them, and then with that, turn to their neighbor out of love, right? Because I think that's where it's hard to have that conversation, especially in the polarized time that we live in, right? Where our policies, our politics define us more than our faith. I think that we find our identity in our political party, and we allow that to define our words and our actions instead of going to God's word and finding them. So how would we find those biases that we have? How do we quelch them, and then turn in a very loving way towards our neighbor in respect, in relationship, and have those hard conversations?
Yeah. It takes the highest level of self-awareness to be able to find biases within yourself, right? And so therefore, it is nearly impossible for most people to do that, to find all their biases and pull them out, Peter. However, it is very possible for other people who walk closely with you to find biases within you and point them out, and then pull those things out for you to be able to examine. So that brings me back to my earlier 3 prongs of that third one, that mentor that walks with you, that person that walks with you. Have a POC that's constantly in your ear, if not live, then a podcast, that you listen to every single day. There's a girl that's named Layla. Her name is Just Layla. Her podcast is Just Layla. And she writes a podcast and produces it about white supremacy. And every day releases a little thing about what Black people are dealing with in America that's connected to it, for you to chew on. Just something really small for you to chew on and think about. Her voice speaking into your life, which you don't even need to know Layla. You don't need to ever talk to her, but her voice speaking into your life one day at a time will change you over time. And I think that when we're looking at biases and prejudices that we have, and then innately racism, we have to understand that it's important to see the bigger picture of what made that thing appear, right? Because it's usually connected to something else. There's a lot of connective tissue that we'll have to sort through, and it won't happen overnight. So walk with somebody who's able to bring that out in you and call that out in you.
Yeah, I think that's great. You keep I'm gonna say harping, but that sounds bad, but it's good. That have those people in your life that speak to you. And the Christian church, we're big on that. We're big on mentorship. Hello, baptismal sponsors.
Yeah.
Hello, kind of the people of faith that walk with you. That's a big part of our baptism, is that we like to celebrate it. We like it to be in church. We like to say, hey, we're the church. We're there to help you right along, as in integrating them into the loving family that they have here. Gerard, we have so many questions.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
So many questions. I just throw up a couple of thank yous. Missy Fisher says, thanks for this. Kobe gave you a big amen. After that, it's kind of fun, at least on a personal note between me and you. It's kind of fun to see the names that are popping up here. Yeah. So you remember Miss Illick? She posted on here. So it's just kind of fun to see. All right. So a lot of the questions that are coming in, if I can summarize them for you guys, so I don't have to put all of them on, is essentially this. And we've kind of hit on it, but let me make it a little bit more, hit the nail on the head a little harder. For those communities that are 97% white, that see the need for diversity,
Yeah.
and see the need that that churches need to match their community. Which the LCMS up to this point, some do well, some don't, right?
Yeah.
What a lot of the questions are just essentially this, without making it a diamond ring thing like you referred to, right?
Yeah.
So that we don't say, hey, look at our one person of color that we have in our church, we're so good, but making it more of an organic, continual thing.
Yeah.
I know you gave us the 3 points, right? The mentorship, the education, all those points. For those people that are wondering that, is there, I don't know, like a step further that you would have, or more words of wisdom? Go.
Yeah. I think that when it comes to looking like your community, yes, that is a great thing to look like your community. Defining what my community is another good thing to think about, though. You put up statistics from Merrill, and I'm just going off the top of my head. You said 9% African American, 1.2% Hispanic, and then what would that be, like 97-ish% then white, right?
Right, correct.
And I'm not picking on Trinity specifically, but does the church look exactly like that? If you do a demographic study, would you have those numbers of those different people groups in the church? Another thing is saturation too. So when we're talking about demographics compared to saturation, it is possible for communities that only have like something like 0.9% Black, for that 0.9% to be so large that you're able to have more African Americans in your church because of community saturation.
Right.
You're able to have more because you reach the entire group. You just don't target to one particular race. You're targeting your entire community, and every facet of your community matters, right? So really the easiest way to explain this would be with ages of people in church. We all crave intergenerational churches. We don't just want younger people only in our church, because that doesn't work, to have only kids in the church, right? Can you imagine a 5-year-old church council president? That'd be really hard. But we don't want only the aging people who are in the church, even though they provide a lot of wisdom and strength for our church. We want a smorgasbord when it comes to that. And we don't do a study on, well, how many 5-year-olds are in the neighborhood? How many 20-year-olds are in the neighborhood? We don't do that. What we do is just say, we want it mixed together. That's how we have to start looking at POCs in our communities. And I really would encourage churches to look out at their community and see if they have people that they've never seen before, that they've just been uncomfortable reaching more than anything else. So that's the first thing. But to the education piece, there is a course called Witnessing Whiteness that any congregation, any organization can order. They will, I believe, help you find a teacher as well for that course that really deeply explains a lot of different issues that POCs deal with, African Americans specifically. I'm talking about redlining. I'm talking about sharecropping modern day, which would be modern day payday loans. But I'm not even going to get into that. Which would be white privilege, white supremacy as a big overarching term, and then middle passage syndrome that I think I named earlier today. Some other big concepts that are just things that are hard to know just off the bat. And so Witnessing Whiteness goes through all those different things. If you're interested in starting that in your congregation, it is certainly possible to do that. As far as Bible studies goes, Reverend Keith Haney, who is an Iowa West District mission executive, has written a really good Bible study series on this, on diversity, inclusion, and race issues. It was released last year, about this time, last summer, so it's really fresh. And it's a CPH piece, I believe. Go ahead, and churches, small groups, invest in that. Go through that together. It talks about a lot of diversity issues from perspective of the scriptures. And then writers like John Nunez, Voices in the City, he's got that book from 99, but still has really good concepts in it. You've got articles that are written by numerous Lutheran pastors, Vic Belton and some others. And then also my partner, John Schmicky, who is white, who has been serving a Black community for 31 years, our church. he is coming out with a book that comes out next month on urban ministry, and it touches on some race issues as well from the perspective of a white pastor, in an all-Black congregation, which is pretty cool to look at too. So there's plenty of books in that respect. Again, Layla's podcast is a great resource to get to. Me and White Supremacy is what she calls that podcast. And then there's a book called Wide Awake, White Awake. Sorry, I always call it Wide Awake, White Awake, which is a book from the Christian perspective. And I believe the writer on that, his name escapes me, but I might just email it to you, Adam, and you
please.
People too. Yeah. But there's a lot of resources.
Yes. So thank you for following through on your promise that you would give some resources kind of towards the end here. So I appreciate that. Anything that you can kind of do to more than just keep this in the forefront of your mind, but to learn, to learn more about it, and then apply yourself and can contextualize it, and find those people of color in your community that are willing to walk with you and to talk you through it. My guess is that a lot of people are willing to do that, because it's the question that question has been, on the edge for such a long time, but nobody's looked to them and nobody's asked it.
Yeah.
And just so that we can do more. So I think that Bible study that you were talking about, One Nation Under God, Healing Racial Divides in America. So thanks Josh for that. Yes. Also, Jenny Montgomery, great job, you guys. I think she's mostly referring to you. So way to go.
She's mostly talking.
Sarah Cleveland, thank you for your time, helping give us a better understanding. So as we kind of wrap up here, it's been about an hour here. I know that, you have little ones. You have little ones that want to see you. You have a wife that wants to see you. And I know life as a pastor, you don't always get all that much time. So is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think we've talked about a lot in the last hour. But if I could impress anything upon this moment, I would say, let's not just do this because it's hot to do right now. And my generation, our generation, Adam, we're the most guilty of doing this, right? So this is right now. So let's just do this thing, social injustice, we're going to do this. Let's keep doing this, and let's keep talking about this. Let's keep speaking life into it. Let's keep speaking from the perspective of the scriptures, and let's do it in a way that demonstrates Christ to the nations. Lutheran Hour's old motto was bringing Christ to the nations and bringing the nations to Christ. I remember that because my dad used to listen to it when I was very little, and I don't hear the guy's voice in the backseat. But the nations are coming to us. This is a localized society too, that POCs are showing up in our communities. What will we do as we bring Christ to them and as we show them him? And I leave you with the scripture of Jesus looking out over Jerusalem, over all the people, and it said he had splunkna, he had pity on them, or you could translate it a lot of different ways. My favorite is that he had mercy on them, that he sympathized and empathized with them. His guts were poured out for them. And he wanted to gather them under his wings, like a mother hen would gather her chicks. That's an Old Testament reference that he did in the New Testament. He didn't say, I want to gather only certain people under my wings, right? He didn't say, I want people who are woke only to be under my wings and people who are not. He wanted to gather all of us under his wings as we learn from him and as we sit at the feet of Jesus. So I would just say, keep sitting at the feet of Jesus, keep at the church, keep listening to good preaching and teaching.
Yeah, Gerard, that's great. It reminds me of a phrase that I don't know who said it, I'm sure it was Dr. Bierman, because he has all the good quotes. But somebody said, if the church doesn't have anything to say, it shouldn't speak. If the church has something to say, it should speak. And if you call Trinity home, you're going to hear that in the sermon. So heads up. But that gets to the point that, if the church speaks when it shouldn't, when it doesn't have anything to say, it's going to be a noisy gong in the middle of a lot of noise. Mm-hmm. But if it speaks when it has something to say, people will listen.
Yes.
And I want to, jump on what you said, is that the church has something to say about this.
Yes.
And the church is not silent about this, because we're all made in the image of God, right? You're made in the image of God. I'm made in the image of God. And I think that's awesome that God has such a great creativity and imagination, and it shows. Mm-hmm. And we are called, as followers of Jesus, to love our neighbor. That's what our job is. So as we wrap up, I want to encourage you guys to check out Bethlehem Lutheran Church in St. Louis. They're doing awesome things. And if you haven't checked out Pastor Bolling's sermon from last week, again, check it out. It's on the phrase Black Lives Matter and that mishpat, that judgment. I encourage you to do that. But as we leave here, Gerard, can I say a prayer for you and your ministry?
I'd love that. I'd love it.
All right, guys, let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you. We thank you for the gift of your Son that reconciles us to you, and that we are now at the feet of Jesus, learning, saved, redeemed. But Lord, just like your image, the image that you give us, you have an imagination. Your creativity is out of this world, and we see it in creation. Lord, help us as the church to bring that message out. Help us, Lord, to walk alongside each and every neighbor that we find, that we may serve them, and in so doing, that they may see you. Lord, I pray for Pastor Bolling here in Bethlehem Lutheran Church. May they continue to be faithful to you and your word during these times. Lord, for this and all things, we ask in the name of your Son, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Gerard, there are a lot of people that are saying thanks. So I'm not going to throw them all up, but just know that that people really appreciate you and the words that you have given to us. So I want to say thanks as a pastor, as a friend. Thanks for taking the time.
Yes. God's blessings to you, Trinity, and everyone beyond. You have an awesome pastor, very talented, who is a faithful servant, and so you should count yourselves lucky. And then also, he's got an awesome wife too. She's super good at a lot of stuff.
True.
Super talented.
Very true.
And too. So us as well. Yeah.
All right, Gerard. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
See you guys.